6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I got it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
Making review. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to another action-packed episode of Rank and Review. This episode, regular guest Lee Beckman and your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, are going to look at 6 films on the subject of giant monsters. So, I don't know what more I need to say beyond that, other than, as usual, you can expect coarse language, and as usual, you can expect spoilers for the movies discussed. Please visit the website at rankandreview.ca, send feedback to rankandreview@gmail.com, and seek out the Facebook page. Throw me a like, maybe a review on iTunes. Anything you can do to help spread the word on the show would be greatly appreciated. Welcome to another exciting edition of Rank and Review. All right, so here we go with my most frequent guest, Mr. Lee Beckman. Thank you for coming back yet again. Today we're going to be discussing giant monsters.
BFM.
Big fucking monsters.
Yeah.
And we started talking about this a little bit earlier, but we kept having to stop ourselves and save it for the podcast. But the thing about when you're talking about things like King Kong or Godzilla or dragons or dinosaurs is that part of what you're stepping into, I think, is you're engaging with something that is openly ludicrous. And I think that is the battle that most of the movies we're going to have to talk about today have to sort of either embrace or conquer, or, you know, you either got to hide it or you got to just sort of fully, you know, love it.
You have to embrace it, yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions that we started to have before we said save it for the podcast. Is at some point you do have to get over the ridiculous notions that there are giant beasts coming at you. I guess I like the recurring themes of we are not high in the food chain. We're not stronger than nature. That sort of percolates through all of these. That's I think one thing I really enjoy about all of them.
And I think that they're movies that can almost get by on the sort of idea of style as spectacle.
Yes.
It's not about being able to outsmart Godzilla, or outthink King Kong. It's about the destruction, the path of damage between where he escapes and where he lands. It's about the journey. And it's about embracing the things that are absolutely ludicrous. I think pretty high up on my list, if I was forced to make a list of, favorite or most influential or most personally loved movies of Larry, the original King Kong would have to make a place pretty high up on that list for me. I have a genuine affection for the movie, and a lot of people do. And it's completely bonkers. It's completely openly ridiculous and bonkers, and it lives in a world of utter fantasy and indulgence. And for that, I love it. But it's a surprisingly delicate art.
I agree. I would say half these movies are good,
Yeah.
and half these movies the errors are very evident.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
So you picked this list. I mean, out of many.
Yeah.
Why did you want to talk about this?
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Is like, why do you love these movies so much, Larry? I mean, I guess you just sort of explained it just in that opening.
I loved King
monologue.
Kong. I did watch King Kong a lot when I was a kid, and I've always had an affinity for the Jurassic Park franchise. Even the weaker entries of the movie, even though I acknowledge they're bad, I enjoy watching them.
Yeah.
In spite of their badness.
Yeah.
Because dinosaurs eat people. And there's a 12-year-old boy locked somewhere inside this man's body who still gets off on that for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely an art to making a really good disaster/monster movies. That's essentially what these are.
Yeah.
They follow that whole model of disaster movies, and if you don't like them, well, then your opinion's not going to change.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an art. There's definitely a way to make a good monster movie and a bad way to make a monster movie, and I think we will definitely talk about that in this cast.
It's strange. I think you have to kind of accept that your star is your monster.
Yes. You have to love your monster.
You still have to have interesting enough supporting characters that we care when they die.
Yes. I also agree.
But you can overdo it. I keep going back to the original King Kong. I was horrified by this idea of these band of adventurers that set upon this journey in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And we start with 20 or 30 of them. Mm-hmm. And we don't get to know a lot of them very well at all. But almost none of them make it out of this exercise.
We'll talk about that when we get to King Kong, though.
Yeah. And it's King Kong. It's not Saving Private Ryan. And not everybody needs to have their personal soliloquy. We don't need to know everybody's backstory.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be familiar. They have to be relatable. We have to be able to cheer for them. Mm-hmm. And if we're not awed by the monster or frightened by the monster, we need some sort of hook into it, other than ooh, big scary teeth.
Yeah, I will agree that your monsters are your main stars, and if you don't, if they don't have it, you don't have it, kind of thing. So yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah. One of my favorite movies of all time is in the selection, and I'm sure we'll know when we get to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The 6 films that Lee Beckman and your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons are going to be reviewing this episode. Godzilla. We have Roland Emmerich's take on Godzilla from the 90s. Mm-hmm. We have Cloverfield, the sort of ambitious attempt at doing a forced perspective giant monster movie.
Yep.
We have Guillermo del Toro, rank and review director favorite, Pacific Rim. Mm-hmm. It's giant monsters versus giant robots.
On paper, it should have been... Yeah.
And we have the absolute unabashed classic, I think we can fairly say, Jurassic Park from Steven Spielberg. We have the controversial blockbuster from Peter Jackson that he followed up the Lord of the Rings trilogy. His take on the King Kong, which was an uphill battle for me, as I've said. I love the original. Mm-hmm. And the I don't know if it's really cult respected or if it's just cult respected in my mind, but the utterly baffling and demanding of attention, be it good or bad, Reign of Fire. In a world where dragons taken over.
I know.
Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale versus fire-breathing dragons.
We should say no more and just save our love for it when we get there.
So, yes, I think this will be an interesting episode. So, let's just jump right to it.
A creature has been awakened that has lain dormant for millions of years. A species older than the dinosaurs and more terrifying than anything we could have imagined.
How did they go from 1 to 1 million in less than a year?
Highly evolved.
They have great vision in the day. They have even better vision at night.
Extremely intelligent.
He's playing hide and seek. More like cat and mouse.
Unbelievably powerful.
2 glands in the mouth secrete separate chemicals.
Combining exhalation, natural napalm.
Good luck.
Now, One will protect them,
We have to hang on, work together.
and one will lead them.
There's nothing magical about it. They're made of flesh and blood. You take out their heart, you
Okay.
bring down the beast.
Rob Bowman.
Yep.
I think at the time that Reign of Fire was coming about, I think he was mainly known for his attachment to the X-Files franchise.
He'd done a couple episodes, and then the first movie, did he not?
Yeah, and he was a preferred director on that show, and he kind of got his own ticket at the end of the original version of the X-Files. And, with his ticket to Hollywood and his first, big budget genre feature, he's going to bring us Reign of Fire. Mm-hmm. What can I say about Reign of Fire?
What can you say about Reign of Fire?
It's different. I'll give you that. This is a post-apocalyptic dragon movie. Mm-hmm. Dragons are unearthed in the city of London, and they basically propagate rapidly and proceed to burn and consume the planet.
Mm-hmm. They eat the ash. I like that. I like that little detail, is that the dragons, all they really do is eat the ash of everything that they cook.
Yeah. And we sort of fast forward to from the beginning of the movie where we see the origin, where this first dragon is unleashed, to the bulky, muscular, on his way to Batman, Christian Bale.
Yep.
And his team of ragtag survivors who are living out of the ruins of some old castle and have hidden crops where they're, trying to feed this desperate group of children and teaching them to live in a world where you hide deep underground and you run from the monsters. Their somewhat delicate, fragile society is then interrupted by the Americans, led by a literal walking, talking penis.
Yes, really.
Played by Matthew McConaughey.
I think, depending whether you're going to like this movie or not, it's whether or not you're accepting what Matthew McConaughey is doing. If you just love and accept it, then I think you're going to enjoy this movie. If you're Karen Giese, you're not going to watch this movie, because everything that you hate of this man is on full display.
It's bizarre.
So Karen Giese, this movie's for you. Yeah. He's more just the personification of a huge American penis. Really, it's not really a character. I love it. Yeah. I love it. I do, but I can understand why people do not.
The first time we see this bald-headed, bearded, Mad Max-looking Matthew McConaughey, he's literally straddling.
He enters the compound in the tank. The first time we see him, he comes out of the tank, if you remember. But he does.
He does ride into the compound straddling the tank. And if the movie was a comedy or a satire or had that sort of tone of goofiness to it, I would have said, oh, well, I'm rolling with the punches. But up until this point, despite the fact that it's dragons taking over the world, this movie has taken itself quite seriously.
Yeah.
So when the Americans show up, it is a very bizarre shift in tone.
It becomes a cartoon. No, Matthew McConaughey, bravo.
You would think this was made by British people. I know it's set in
It was
London.
shot in London.
Yeah, but it's an American production for the most part, as far as I know. And because it really feels like this is what the outsiders would view the American military to be as, and not something that there's nothing credible about them. Like, you don't believe that they could have survived this long. Yeah. Like, the almost entire team gets cleaned out trying to catch one dragon, and this well-rendered but ridiculous skydiving sequence.
We'll get to that, but I want to come back to McConaughey. I love the fact that his character just speaks in sort of like low growls all the time. It's like, you know what this is? We were in the middle of a field when it came upon us. Almost like, I'm sure at some point him and like Christian Bale were sitting, while they, sort of off from the set a little bit, and I'm sure Christian Bale at one point was like, "Hey Matthew, Warner Brothers might cast me in this Batman movie," and Matthew kind of going, "Well, make sure Batman talks in a low growl like this." He does. It's just he swings for the fences.
At the time, Christian Bale hadn't really fully uncorked yet and become,
a big
Batman
action
and
star.
huge.
Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey had already sort of passed his point where he was the Hollywood up-and-comer, but he didn't quite live up to the hype yet.
Yeah.
He's had since this career resurgence.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, this movie starring Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey was not at all considered star-studded.
Yeah.
These were very available actors to
Yeah.
them. So I think part of it through the lens of where we are now, with Oscar winners, Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a different thing. Like, they would never lower themselves to be in a movie like this. I also think it's interesting, and it speaks to both of, the mind of a working actor and these two specific ones, is that as fucked as this movie is, it is neither the weirdest movie in McConaughey's catalog, nor is it the weirdest movie in Christian Bale's catalog.
No.
And that is, in of itself, some insane trivia.
No, this movie is utterly ridiculous. We might as well get to the sequence. What are they called? Archangels? Is that what they're called?
Apparently, in order to catch these dragons or lure these dragons, they will airlift these guys. They'll jump out and spring nets to slow down the dragons. But I don't know how one would learn how to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know what the win to loss ratio is. Like, how many times do you jump out of that airplane before
and then expect to survive? I know they sort of joke about it. It's completely and utterly ludicrous. Like, if I was an archangel, I'd be like, you know the percentages of us surviving? You're like, no, it's totally dumb and ludicrous. The fact that they would have to shoot a net to get these dragons.
There's got to be an easier way to feed me to this dragon.
Really? No.
Because that's all that seemed to be happening in that sequence.
It's so stupid, but it works. It's such a well-made action sequence.
I mean, arguably the luckiest guy is the guy who is so preoccupied in looking for the dragon that he fails to open his chute and just gets killed by hitting the ground. But,
no.
I mean, I've never seen a movie like this, and in a way I have to give it points for that. But it's almost catastrophically stupid, so I've got to take points away from that.
I know, but do you really? Because I think it sort of knows it's a Saturday afternoon matinee, turn your brain off. I mean, you do have to embrace the suck of this movie. Rain of Fire is almost this movie where it's so bad it's good. I don't think it's quite that level, but it is such a joyride, and I know it's bad.
It's a bad movie that I enjoy watching, but I cannot honestly look myself in the mirror and say this is a good movie.
I know.
I couldn't honestly recommend somebody, you should watch this movie.
Yeah.
I would say...
You'd have to watch it with your special sort of, movie geek friends, maybe. I don't know.
I would say, by all means, go ahead and watch Reign of Fire, but I'm not endorsing it. I'm saying watch it. But I'm not necessarily saying that you will like or dislike it. I'm saying you won't see anything quite like it. And again, the tone all over the place. As we get deeper into the movie, we find out that they have to get this one big bad dragon.
The male dragon.
The one male, that the reason that they're able to propagate so much is this. So there is a sequence where the dragon in one pass brings the group from about 50 members to 2 or 3.
Yeah.
With one pass.
Yeah.
And again, by this point we've been so married into this ridiculous yeehaw American crew that any reality has almost been lost. Yeah. So that when all of those people die, meh. I felt more empathy towards the limeys, the British ones that Christian Bale was protecting. A lot of them were kids who spend their lives underground and just living terrified. They're not macho. I know. I felt for their plight. I honestly, because of the cartoonish portrayal of the Americans, didn't feel anything when they died. Yeah. They were like the guys who were getting killed in King Kong, except their deaths were less interesting. They were, I couldn't give you any of the characters' names, and I've seen the movie several times.
Yeah, I do like the attention to detail of the world they sort of portray in this post-apocalyptic world. The fact that they have to live underground, that they've got a falcon that sort of signals when they come, that there's been attacks before. There's that there's a history to the universe that they portray, especially for a 100-some-minute movie, because it does move. It
does earnestly try to do some world building.
Yeah.
Like we hear the kids singing a nursery rhyme about how to hide from a dragon.
Yeah, that also.
We see like a school play of him retelling his sort of Coles Notes version of
Star Wars. I thought that was a nice little nod.
And yeah, like again, that's all sort of before the Americans show up. And in a way, like, I was sort of almost going with it. Like, yeah, this is a crazy premise, but so are zombies, so are vampires.
Yeah.
And since you're taking it seriously, so will I.
Yeah.
And that is, again, belied with the presence of Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
That said, I don't dislike Matthew McConaughey in this because he was making some bold choices. And I have to believe that that's what the script was asking him to do.
And if Matthew McConaughey is listening to this, and I'd like to think he is.
I'm sure he
Matthew, this one's for you.
This is when you should have won the Oscar.
Tell your agent that he needs to find you a Viking movie and take the character from Reign of Fire and put him in there, and I am there opening night. I don't know. I mean, in some ways it doesn't belong in this movie because everyone else is trying to be so serious. Mm-hmm. But I would pay good money to see Matthew McConaughey reprise his role in a Viking movie.
Well, and as I gotta say it, like, as much as his presence in the movie is comparable to another movie you and I reviewed, The Ghost in the Darkness, when all of a sudden Michael Douglas shows up and the movie gets kicked up 2 or 3 notches weirder than it had already been.
Yeah. Yep.
And much like the Michael Douglas character, spoilers for Ghost of the Darkness and spoilers for Reign of Fire, our macho hero does not see it through to the end.
He has a glorious death. I mean, that's one thing where I'm sure there's an unrated version. So when he lunges at the dragon, he's actually naked with his big red cock flying in the air, and he's trying to hit the dragon with it. That's what I was kind of hoping for.
That's honestly not where my mind went.
Wait a second. I said too much.
It's on the record now.
Okay.
But I will say, for as patently ludicrous
you are going to edit that, right?
As ridiculous as the McConaughey character is, they matched his ridiculousness with the scale and spectacle of his death.
I know.
I'll let you just watch the movie to experience it. And
you have to tell them.
And that's the thing about the movie. Is it good? Well, I don't know.
No.
Is it bad? I can't quite say it's bad. It is an experience that's probably worth having.
Yes, I agree.
But
we almost feel ashamed for liking this movie. That's the problem.
Yeah, like that's my if they do an anniversary edition and Rank and Review gets quoted on the back of the box, that's what I want it to be.
Yeah,
it's an experience that's probably worth having. So endorses Rank and Review. Sure, absolutely. Go ahead and watch Reign of Fire. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
you won't see another movie like it. I can't quite say it's good. I can't quite say
Gerald Butler's in this too.
Gerard Butler, that's right, yeah.
For all you Gerald Butler fans.
Yeah.
Tonight we dine in hell, Butler.
It's fun enough. I like the way the dragons look, especially the big bad one at the end.
Yeah.
But the tone's all over the place. The characters are fairly undimensioned.
Yeah.
It's as dumb as the premise of the movie.
It's also mercifully short. I think if we stayed any longer, like I tried to be this big, serious, pretentious epic, we'd be like, but it is. I mean, it's barely 90 minutes. It's over 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's got it's a Mad Max flavor with with dragons.
Yep.
There you go. Good enough?
Yep.
So, Peter Jackson.
You.
I haven't really talked a lot about Peter Jackson in the podcast.
Really, which is a shame because you should.
Because I am a fan of his. I know that he can be somewhat divisive in sort of nerdverse.
Yes.
Peter Jackson is a director who always follows the mantra that more is more. Some people think
sometimes
less is
restraint
more.
is an issue with him.
Yeah, and that's it.
But that's not a bad thing.
And, I don't side with him 100% either way.
Yeah.
I prefer the extended editions of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I prefer the not extended editions of The Hobbit.
Yes.
When it comes to this arguably indulgent King Kong movie, which was almost 3 hours, I think, in its theatrical release, and even longer when it came out on DVD, a lot of people kind of wagged their finger a little bit, sort of saying, too much, too big, too silly. Well, here's my defense of Peter Jackson's King Kong, because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan, actually. I mean, it's definitely got some ludicrous stuff to it, but you got to consider the source material. And the source material of King Kong, when it released, was the biggest, boldest, incredible special effects extravaganza spectacle that anyone had ever imagined, let alone presented to a film audience.
Yeah.
And he sort of took that spirit, Peter Jackson took that spirit and tried to put it in a modern context. And if you're going to make a 3.5, 4 hour epic monster movie, it fucking might as well be King Kong.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. Now, do you need any monster movie to be this big, to be this epic? I don't know. But if you're going to do it, I say King Kong's the movie to do it for.
It's definitely one, and you could definitely try. I think the fact, he had just come off Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And this is his Jaws in a lot of ways. This is the movie that made him want to go into filmmaking. Yeah. And if you're going to redo King Kong, you're going to have to obviously make it big, but also give something new to the table. Yeah. And he definitely did that with this version. I guess comparing it to, and there's like at least 2 versions. It's been remade once before in '76, right? Yeah. So there's already been a remake of King Kong. One thing that really, really works about this movie is the stuff on Skull Island, which is really its own different movie in a lot of ways in King Kong. Yeah. In this version, we see way more of it. So much so that now Hollywood's going to try and at least do it one more time now.
Well, there is essentially 3 movies here. You could break this into 3 fairly even chapters. Yeah. The Journey to Skull Island.
Yes.
Skull Island itself.
Yes.
And then New York City.
Yes.
And I think The Journey is interesting, not bad. But of all of the 3 pieces, the one where I think we feel the length the most. I think Skull Island is fucking amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that the New York is largely very well handled and that there's good emotional impact to the end of the movie. But I do concede that by that point, I am worn out.
Yes, a lot has happened. It's that Skull Island is such an emotional ride. There's so many things that go on with it that you are sort of spent by the time you do get to New York. I will concede that. It's
like when I watch The Lord of the Rings now, because they got the extended edition, I can do it a disc at a time, so I'll do a couple hours a night. Yeah. King Kong doesn't break up as neatly as that. So it's almost a King Kong mini-series, if you look at it that way, Yeah. I do think that I'm mixed on some of the cast here.
Really?
Naomi Watts, I think, is amazing.
Yes. This movie doesn't work if we don't feel the relationship between her and Kong at all. And I think where the movie really starts to being really, really good is that scene where she's obviously been taken, he's gone back to the lair, and she's juggling, and they're sort of bonding in that sort of way.
We haven't really told the premise of the movie, but I'm assuming people know the story of King Kong.
If we need to explain King Kong to you, you need to actually go back now and start listening to all of the podcasts and watching these movies.
A filmmaker takes a crew to a forbidden island to get footage for an epic adventure movie and discovers dinosaurs and a giant monkey.
Yeah.
And Darrow gets stolen by King Kong.
And then it turns into the Lost World.
So I think that the main and most significant characters of the movie, other than King Kong, is Ann Darrow and Naomi Watts. And then Adrian Brody, who was hot off of his Oscar. And
Hollywood has tried a couple of times to make him action hero, man.
Well, but this isn't Predator, I want to be Christian Bale, Adrian Brody. Yeah. This is like, he's actually sort of a skinny, lanky writer who is sort of forced into a sort of hero position. And I like what they were going for, but his character is almost unnecessary to the story.
Yeah, it's sort
It's
of
really a story about Andero and
King Kong. Absolutely.
And the secondary story is the story of Jack Black's character trying to make this movie. I like Jack Black. I genuinely like Jack Black. I think there's something about his presence in the movie. He's a very...
Well, he's essentially supposed to be Orson Welles in a lot of ways.
He's a contemporary presence
Yeah.
in this movie that is not contemporary. And he sticks out a little bit. It's not a complete disaster or anything like that, but I almost think that this version of the events, Dunham becomes such a villain
Yes.
that by the time the New York scene happens, I want Jack Black to be squished by King Kong.
Oh, no, I'm actually kind of mad that he survives the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives the last line, does he not?
Yeah, which a lot of people groan at, but that's a direct wink to the original movie as well.
Yeah.
But I think that they may have overplayed. I can't decide if it's a script thing or if it's a performance thing, but I'm not 100% on board with the Jack Black.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Naomi Watts and King Kong, played by Andy Serkis.
Yes, who is really the true star of this movie in a lot of ways. He does 2 performances to begin with.
Yeah, he's also one of the more featured crew members on the boat. But the rendering of King Kong is absolutely incredible.
Legendary. It's legendary. It's really, really good. And I love
believe him.
Yeah.
You believe him 100%.
Yeah.
And Naomi Watts was either looking at nothing or she was looking at Andy Serkis with a bunch of dots on his face.
That's what it was for most of it.
And, not to the scale of what Kong would actually be. So her performance is doubly impressive for that. Because she didn't know how amazing the special effect was going to work out.
Yeah.
And, this is one of those performances that, people could miss in the special effects. But as far as I'm concerned, she should have got some serious award attention for her work in this movie.
This movie doesn't work if we don't believe and fall in love with the sort of relationship that Andero and King Kong have. And we do. And we do. There's a scene where there's juggling, and then when they've just experienced that big, huge fall down the cliff, and the Tyrannosaurus, which is also a highlight of the movie. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
But the scene where she chases after him and he's being all sort of grumpy, and then they watch the sunset.
Yeah.
That scene is beautiful and so well acted. And then there's the scene in the pond in the third act, which is so good. That if we don't feel that emotional pull, because King Kong is really the tragic hero of this piece in a lot of ways. And I love that's one thing about this version of King Kong that I think the other two don't really have. They see Kong as the monster. There's some sympathy towards him in the 76 version, but Kong is very much the villain in the original. Yeah. So,
I think there's an element of sympathy to Kong because of him being taken from his jungle, and once he's in New York and lost and doesn't know how to do, he's just a wild animal trying to find his home. Yeah. And in that way we can relate to that. But one of the strong things I like about Kong, and I think they captured it well here, is that he is an animal.
Yeah.
And he is sort of driven to, the weird irrational acts that you tend to see in greater apes. You know, he will throw a temper tantrum, and he isn't always 100% rational. Yeah. But he is intelligent enough that you can kind of reach him. But there's a danger there. There's a sort of a balance.
Well, he's kidnapped from his home.
Yeah,
I know it's there in all 3 versions, but I really love the fact that he's just very much a sympathetic character. He's very capable of great brutal violence. But
it's more of a genuine relationship in this movie. Yeah. There's something crassly sexual about the King Kong's fixation with Andero in both the original and definitely in the 70s version of this movie. In this movie, they seem to connect like you would connect almost to a very beloved pet or an animal. We empathize with each other's plight, and that they've managed to realize that with the special effect is amazing. Yeah. But I want to go back to where I started with this review, in that Peter Jackson's sort of mantra is that more is always more. Okay. The most famous scene in the original King Kong is, of course, King Kong fighting this T-Rex.
Yes.
So, of course, Peter Jackson's going to give us that. Yeah. Except for he's going to give us 3 T-Rexes.
And which I was like, oh!
Yeah. Oh! And he's going to do all of this fight with King Kong keeping Aunt Darrow balanced by catching her and throwing her within his hands.
Yeah.
And a ludicrous but wonderful scene of dinosaurs falling down canyons and being hung up in vines. Like, conceptually, this is like the territory of Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner.
It is such a well-made action sequence. I love the fact that at one point she falls and she's trapped in the vines as well.
Yeah.
And she looks across and there's one T-Rex going,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, it is well shot and made, and you can follow the action as they tumble down the cliff. It's so good, and then it segues into that final battle on soil.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the money shot.
I understand people's problems with the movie at this point. Mm-hmm. At this point, for me, I'm just a little kid in awe of the spectacle of it. But I even get a little bit worn out by it. And once it takes a good hour almost to get to Skull Island. But once we get to Skull Island, it is a series of horrifying events.
Yeah.
And horrifying.
Yes, which brings me to my next question.
Yes.
There's a scene in this movie that, and the thought never escaped me after I asked it. And it's when, what's that actor's name? Hold on here.
Oh, okay, the movie star. The
movie star, yeah. Where he gives that scene to Adrian Brody. And he says, look, I'm just an actor. No, I'm no hero.
Right.
I've just lost my motivation, and he promptly walks out.
Which is, by the way, the right answer.
Well, yes, that's the question I have for you. Is that at this point, is he wrong for doing that? No.
This jungle has proven itself at every turn to be the most ridiculously deadly place ever.
Yeah,
and
at that point, at least 2 or 3 people have died.
The amount of people that have died just in the first few, first hour of venturing out of the woods would be enough to convince me that Aunt Darrow was lost.
Yeah, well, and
there's no way she's alive.
This is really just one mission to get another person back. To which, at that point, I'm like, because at least 3 people have been murdered at this point.
Yeah.
And kind of going, you know what? This is my job. Sayonara, and walk out. So you have to get around that at that point.
But I go back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. That all of these movies, at their center, at their core, there's just a ludicrous angle to it.
Yeah.
Skull Island is kind of a ludicrous island, but I love that we're in this imaginary world.
Yeah.
But I think he pushes it a little bit far with the scale and energy of the spectacle. Honestly, it might be too much. And it's also way too scary for children.
Oh no, this is not a kid's movie. I cannot believe
that this was a straight flat PG movie.
Yeah.
There's a sequence involving bugs in the bottom of this gorge.
Yeah.
That kill off some of the last members of the crew that we had left.
It is utterly horrifying.
The few characters that we knew well enough to care about.
Yeah.
And they die these horror movie deaths.
Yeah.
Slow, awful horror movie death.
And at this point, they had just lost another major character and then had been pushed down a cliff. Yeah. So it is beyond. All these people have PTSD at this point, at least.
And again, I would wag my finger more at the movie, but I would encourage you to take another look at the original King Kong. Mm-hmm. King Kong squishes people into the ground with his foot. Mm-hmm. There's a great scene where he's looking for Aunt Darrow in New York, and he grabs a woman out of the building, looks at her. Oh, that's not Anne, and he casually tosses her to her death.
Yeah.
Because he's a monkey, and that's not the one he was looking for, and he didn't think that deeply about it.
Yeah.
It was a pretty violent movie, so much so that when it was re-released, they edited it, and for a long time it was hard to find an unedited version of the original King Kong. Mm-hmm. So I think that he was being true to the original, but at the same time, I'm amazed what he got away with. This shit isn't PG.
No.
This is not a PG movie.
No.
This is a horror movie.
This is an adult action horror movie. Yeah. And bravo for that.
But it's not what it was sold as. It's not what it was advertised as. And if you ask Peter Jackson, he would say this was for everyone. Bring the kids. And I'm here to call shenanigans.
Yeah. Definitely, what 14, 15 years old is maybe where
this is scarier than anything in the Lord of the Rings movies by, I think, a substantial margin. That bug pit, honestly.
Yeah.
And if you're watching the extended edition,
that sequence on the river is also so good.
Yeah.
I understood why they cut it because at that point that movie is it's 3.5 hours at least.
The scene we're talking about, they trudging through a swamp. They actually build a half-ass raft and there's two rafts. Yeah, and they get attacked by these water creatures, dinosaurs, and it's another very cool 10-minute action sequence that's sandwiched between a bunch of other action sequences. And Yeah, I get that the movie will wear a lot of people out. I get that I have a special affection for it. I'm always going to say, yes, I'm on board for King Kong.
Yeah.
The things that take away points for other people, I think, like I said, if there's going to be an epic, almost 4-hour monster movie, it might as well be King Kong.
Yeah.
And as much as I said that by the time we got to the third act in New York, I was worn out, it still bums me out every time when King Kong takes his fall off.
Oh, no, it's so sad when he falls.
And it's a monster movie, and I feel for the monster, and it works. I know I have a close friend of mine who just the whole movie was practically undone for him by that final line.
Yeah.
"'Twas beauty killed the beast."
Yeah.
Which does feel kind of on the nose. But it's also the exact way the original film ends. And,
I think I sort of figured it out here a little bit, because your biggest story is the monster. You really have to fall in love with your monster, your beast, somewhat.
And yet he still has to be scary, and they manage that.
Yes. I think that's one of the differences between the ones that work and the ones that don't in this series. You have to honestly have a genuine affection for the big monster. Yes, they'd be horrifying, but you can't take your eyes off them.
I think people who dismiss this version of King Kong are underwriting just how difficult it would be to make a genuinely compelling and emotionally resonant King Kong movie. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and this comes back to being that Andy Serkis is the really big star of this movie. Yeah. The performance he gives as Kong is outstanding, and really the reason to watch the movie. But we've already said that. But when he falls to his death, it's so sad. Anyways.
I'm a big fan of Peter Jackson's King Kong.
I am.
I would just say know what you're getting into. It's a long sit.
Yeah,
I would say 100% worth it.
It is. You're sitting for a while. It's strange. When I first saw this movie in Korea, I was sort of underwhelmed by it. But the more I see it now, I've seen it like 4 times now. I just learned to really, really love and appreciate it.
I would say it falls short of perfect, but for this type of movie, it's pretty fucking solid.
It's awesome.
Phones are out too. Gotta go. Universal Pictures presents. I can't get Jurassic Park back online. Adventure 65 million years in the making. It's just a delay. That's all it is. All major theme parks had delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked. But John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists. You sure we're safe?
Yes. Must have figured out how to open doors.
Jurassic Park.
So, 1993, a little-known filmmaker named Steven Spielberg adapted a novel from an obscure author named Michael Crichton.
Pulp Fiction writer, yes.
Called Jurassic Park. Now, this film, Jurassic Park, and the novel Jurassic Park actually have very little in common. They have some of the same characters, and the basic premise is there. But beyond that, I mean, there's a evil corporation that has found a way to produce real live dinosaurs, and they're trying to create a theme park tourist attraction, and they bring some scientists and some lawyers there to assess the park, and everything goes wrong, and people are eaten by dinosaurs.
Yep.
The book is okay.
It's a great sitting by the beach.
The book is okay. It's violent. It's much more adult oriented. The movie is one of the best monster movies ever made.
Yeah.
And this is from the director who made Jaws, which is arguably the best monster movie ever made.
If you disagree, there's something wrong with you with that statement.
So, he had a high bar to match by his own making.
Yeah.
And I think that Jurassic Park, and this is not a controversial statement, is an incredible movie.
Yeah. I can't believe that in 1 year he made essentially 2 American classic movies in Jurassic Park and Schindler's List before it. And they're such, different and diverse movies.
Unpopular opinion?
Oh, here we go.
Jurassic Park's the better film.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing.
I don't know, man. I mean,
it's a difficult thing to do. A movie that is absolutely ridiculous in its premise, and that works and fires on all cylinders, and that is like a roller coaster ride. I'm gonna, again, I keep on making these movie reviews personal, but let's travel back in time to 1993. Yes. I believe I was in grade 11.
Okay.
And I was struggling. I was not a very good student, especially in the maths. And I came home for lunch, and my father, who was in between jobs at the time, asked me if I'd like to go see Jurassic Park, which was opening that day. And I said, I would love to see Jurassic Park. I do have a math quiz this afternoon. And my father, in his wisdom, responded, I didn't ask you if you had a math quiz this afternoon. I asked if you wanted to see Jurassic Park. And I realized that he wanted to see this movie as much as I did.
Yes.
And that his bringing me along was like an excuse for him to go see this movie. And so I skipped out on that quiz, and me and my dad saw the first matinee of Jurassic Park. And both of us rode those chairs like we were in a roller coaster.
Yeah, I have a funny story about my own.
I was emotionally devastated by Schindler's List.
It's a tough watch.
I could not tell you how many times I've watched Jurassic Park, and I still get echoes. Maybe not the same thing that the first time you go through the ride, but that same experience, it echoes with me.
Well, Jurassic Park is definitely the more rewatchable movies between that and Schindler's List. No one really, sort of says, "Hey, let's have a good night and sit down and watch, Schindler's List and have a good time," because you don't.
And Jurassic Park
it's a well-made history lesson where Jurassic Park is essentially, cinema candy.
It didn't need to be great. Jurassic Park didn't need to be great. All it needed to do is have cutting-edge special effects and dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And it does that. And on top of that, it's great.
Yeah. No, if you need a constant reminder about film language and how good Steven Spielberg is, and you don't want to sit and watch, more adult talky, even sort of dark Steven Spielberg. I'd say this, Jaws, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is a good sort of triple bill, because it is sort of not as more adult.
Yeah.
Spielberg.
I also want to give him points for his casting across the board.
I'm glad we're getting to the casting.
Because at the time, this was still a strong cast that he assembled, and they were working actors. But a lot of people know, Sam Neill from Jurassic Park.
They know
a lot
Laura
of people
Dern.
associate Jeff Goldblum, for whatever reason, with Jurassic Park, even though he's done lots of great performances. Laura Dern, same thing. At the time, these were all really good working actors that were the right person for the roles. And not necessarily, people that were going to bring you the guaranteed box office. The dinosaurs were going to bring people to the theater.
Yeah.
Let's get actors.
Yes.
And I think the cherry on the pie for me, and I say this to my own surprise, maybe Richard Attenborough as the
Yeah, Spielberg has a thing of casting directors in a really good, strong supporting roles. He did that with Close Encounters.
I think most effectively here. I actually genuinely liked that character in a way that you're not really allowed to in the book.
Yeah.
In the book, in fact, he has a rather grisly death. He if I remember correctly, he might even get the compy death that we see portrayed in the second movie. It's interesting because Spielberg took moments from the second book and put it in the first movie, and moments from the first book and put it in the second movie. It's a little bit of a patchwork. But as far as creating a roller coaster ride, which is really fun, quite scary, but still, I think, okay for the kids.
Well, what's really good about this movie? You can talk about how good Sam Neill or Laura Dern or even Samuel Jackson, what's the guy from Seinfeld? Is it Wayne Knight?
Yeah.
But who's really, really good? And you miss it because, the first time, I agree, the dinosaurs are there. They're the star.
Yeah.
But one who I thought that was both who are really, really good, and in a lot of ways, really drive this story, where Joseph Mazzucchello and Adriana
Richards.
Yeah, the kids are so good in this movie, and that's something that I came to realize.
And Spielberg's always had a pretty good eye for
Yeah.
casting kids,
Yeah.
and obviously got a good hand directing them.
Yeah.
You believe the shit out of those kids.
Oh, those kids are put through the ringer. They gave some of the bravest performances, and not once do I doubt them.
No.
They are genuinely kids. They act like kids. They're not annoying. They're so good, and they got to hold their own against Sam Neill,
Yeah.
who's been in how many movies?
Yeah.
Say what you want, and I'm sure has he been not nominated for an Oscar? I could be
don't
wrong,
remember.
but he's had a career.
Yeah.
There's lots of genre movies where he's been in. He's been in prestigious, Best Picture nominee movies, kind of stuff like that. So you're holding your own with Sam Neill. These kids are really, really good.
There is a devastating moment. I remember watching it the first time and it really hitting me. When the first 40 minutes is all sort of tease. We get the great awe moment where we see the dinosaurs for the first time, but we're like, when's shit gonna get real? When's shit gonna get real? And finally we get to the point, the storm is raging, the cars have stopped right outside the Tyrannosaur paddock. And this lawyer who's in the car with the kids, they're all in the car, he sees what's going down, he sees that this Tyrannosaurus Rex is coming, and he runs.
He bails, which is a common reaction.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a cowardly thing.
And by the time Sam Neill gets to the kids, Ariana Richards is in shock.
Yeah.
And the only thing she can say, and she says it over and over again, is, he left
me.
us.
Yeah, he left us. Yeah.
And there was like, they didn't need, like, the stakes were already so high, like, they didn't need a moment that awesome in the midst of all this.
Yeah.
But it like, I already kind of love that girl because she was in Tremors, and I love the shit out of Tremors.
Yeah.
And it was great seeing her again in this, but that was an amazing moment. That was a flat out amazing moment in an amazing sequence.
Yeah.
And this movie's just getting started.
It's I'd say, bona fide classic action sequence. If you want to talk about one of the best action sequences ever filmed, that opening Tyrannosaurus scene. And once again, this is the genius of Spielberg and how he's a master at his craft. At this point, CGI was still relatively this new spectacle thing. We'd had Terminator 2, we had The Abyss, and it really sort of started with Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which is, of course, made by
Carpenter.
The Jerry Award-winning Carpenter. But Spielberg knows that CGI works better if it's done at night. So when that Tyrannosaurus comes in and it's bathed in both, light and also dark shadow, it looks very authentic.
Yeah.
And it then turns into this ultimately suspenseful, terrifying. I love the fact that there's no sound and all you hear is the sound of the footprints and the thunder. Just the beginning of that is so good. But then that sequence where the car just gets squished down and the mud comes in. Yeah. That poor boy is just, woo! Like, even I would be like, I'm done.
Yeah. It's intense and it's scary, but I mean, because there are kids, I think the kids will identify with it. And that'll be a scary sequence. When I watched this with my son, memorably afterwards, he said that he liked the movie, but that he hoped that I didn't show him something that scary.
Ever again,
but I don't think it was too scary. Like, I still think, like, he liked it. Yeah. But it is intense.
Yeah. That scene where they're trying to, that Rex is trying to clamp down and there's that pane of glass between them. Yeah. And the kids are, like,
again, kids and adults next to each other riding their chairs like they're in a roller coaster.
I love the fact that there's a ruthlessness to Spielberg. Yeah. There really, really is. He knows how to terrify people.
And he takes his time. Like I said, it's 40 minutes or so, almost an hour before he turns it on. But once it turns, the rest of the movie is just relentless fun and action and great jump scares and memorable scene after memorable scene. You talk about the special effects and the pushing of the computer graphics. Yeah. And especially with the wide shots with the herds of dinosaurs, with the Gallimimus running. And
those look CGI.
They look a little CGI, but they look good considering the time.
Yeah.
But I think that due credit needs to be said to the amount of stuff that was done practically.
Yes.
There's a sick Triceratops and a lot of the stuff with the raptors that
is all prosthetics.
Close-up shots. Yeah. basically, if you go close up on a raptor, chances are it was prosthetic.
Yeah.
If it's a wide shot, chances are it was CGI.
Yeah.
But it's seamless.
Yep.
And there are a lot of movies made around this time of 1993, early to mid 90s, that have CGI that has aged terribly.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a few of the big wide shots where I definitely feel the CGI here.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
you believe that the dinosaurs are very much real.
And for the most part, this movie looks as impressive today to me as it did in 1993.
Another thing that this movie gets right, and this is getting back to being in love at some point with your monsters, is there's still very much a scientific sense of awe with these creatures. Both Crichton, David Koepp, who was also a co-writer, and Spielberg all love dinosaurs, and you can feel that love and joy. The scene with the Brachiosaurus, that's awesome. The scene with the Triceratops, that's really good. Like, they actually love dinosaurs, and you once again, as a kid, you're like, woo, and that starts going.
And I like the characters share the audience's awe at seeing these dinosaurs.
It also helps that you've got John Williams doing your big,
of course,
like awe moments.
But like at the time when we first saw those dinosaurs in '93, this was the best rendering of dinosaurs we'd ever seen.
Yeah,
and the wave of awe that washes over the characters when they clear that meadow,
you feel that somewhat.
We feel it with them.
Yeah,
it is an absolutely wonderful moment.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I know I said that controversial thing about Schindler's List, and it sounds inflammatory, but I love the scene at the beginning where there's a man attacked by a dinosaur and we don't see the dinosaur.
Yes.
I love the scene where they first see the dinosaurs and they're
the
moved to tears by it.
Yeah.
I love the scene in the med lab where they have the debate about the morality.
That's another thing that makes this movie so good, is that
I love the scene of the T-Rex that we just talked about.
Yes.
There are scene and sequence after sequence after sequence that I absolutely love. Mm-hmm. What are your 3 most memorable sequences from Schindler's List?
Girl with the red coat. I would... that whole sequence with the girl with the red coat is probably good.
My point is...
There's so many different things to like about Schindler's List.
Schindler's List is so emotionally devastating that it just washes over you. And it like the sort of black and white brutal thing that it is. And I realize it's a completely different animal than this. I don't take as much from it. I am so emotionally drained and just too busy crying into my pillow that I don't like. I recognize it's a powerful film, but I think Jurassic Park is just like every scene impresses me in a new and different way.
I think we should save this.
They're different movies.
We should save this for another different podcast.
I'll put the focus back on Jurassic Park.
It's like once again you're trying to compare us, between like gold and diamonds.
They're both amazing movies. Don't get me wrong. I just wanted. It's not a popular thing to say, but
no. It's an honest thing to say.
It's an honest
but
thing
whatever.
This is one of the greatest monster movies
of
ever
all time.
Made.
Yes. I let's get back to the scene where they're talking about the ethics of science and the scientists who basically never asked whether they should scene. That's really, really good. That's sort of a staple of, your social science fiction monster movies anyway, so I'm glad that's there. I also love the little cartoon explaining the DNA. Once again, that's sort of like, in love and awe of science a little bit.
Throwing back to the old sort of Disney educational films.
That's all really, really, really well done. This movie is just absolute divine. Spielberg also is a master, once again, of crafting action sequences. That raptor attack in the third act with the kids, and then it segues with Samuel and Laura Dern.
Yeah.
There's some amazing, especially that roof sequence where they've climbed in the roof, and the raptor, of course, we know it's coming, but it's still sort of a and that shot of the girl dangling from the roof with the raptor's on its back trying to recover.
We're just nerding out at this point, but I will also say the scene where Laura Dern is turning on the lights to the electrified fence as the boy is climbing it, and that whole scene peaks and culminates with what should be a relieving moment, and suddenly she is attacked from behind by a velociraptor. Has got to win with one of the best jump scares I've ever witnessed in a theater.
And Spielberg knows that there's only so many jump scares you can do. You've got to pace them well.
So we like Jurassic Park?
Yeah, it's maybe.
If you have a heart or were ever a child, you should like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And if you don't like Jurassic Park,
There's something wrong with you.
I think maybe talk to someone.
Yes.
You may not think it's as amazing as Lee and I do, but it's an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, I think maybe you just don't like movies.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the master's greatest films. If you had to put a top 10 of rank and review sort of sci-fi horror monster movies, you would have to put the first Jurassic Park, because it's everything that and so much more. Apparently there was a 3D release of it. I never went to it then, I'm sure, but that would have been also just simply gorgeous to look at. It's just one of the best monster movies ever made.
Steven Spielberg, that greedy son of a bitch, has made 2 of the greatest creature features ever.
And we love you.
At the end of our time, we have chosen to believe in each other. Today we face the monsters that are at our door. Today we are canceling the apocalypse.
So the last couple of movies, I know I sort of like fanboyed all over King Kong and all over Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And I bring my own personal baggage to those movies.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Pacific Rim now. And I have my own personal baggage in that I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro.
Yes, am I.
But I'm not as big into this whole world of kaiju or giant robots, cyberpunk, manga style storytelling. Mainly because I'm not largely experienced in it, but this is maybe for the younger kids, more for the younger kids generation than it is for me. I'm starting to feel a little bit like an old man, and this movie wasn't 100% for me.
Yeah.
The attraction for me was all Guillermo del Toro.
Yep.
And what I will say is that as far as bringing spectacle to the screen, as far as giant robots fighting giant monsters, which is the ludicrous premise of Pacific Rim, that is rendered really, really well. But as I'm watching the movie, and I've watched it 3 times now, I am overwhelmed by the fact that I don't feel anything at any point. And that I am increasingly weighed down, and this is just me talking, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but as well rendered as the spectacle is, I do not connect to it and engage with it in the way that I typically do with Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
And I can't decide if it is the kaiju, if it is the story, if it's just too much not for me, or if maybe I just have a hard time, saying out loud that I didn't like a Guillermo del Toro movie that wasn't Blade 2.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I'm saying I feel like I should be foaming at the mouth over how kick-ass and awesome Pacific Rim is.
Yeah.
And I think it was all right.
I think it was you that told me, or maybe I read this, that Guillermo del Toro once said that he would never make a movie if it didn't have a monster or ghost in it.
Yeah.
And God love him for it.
No, I'm
and
all
I think
about that.
But that's part of the problem with this movie, is that they're very much interested in both the robots and the monsters, that the people and even the stories ultimately suffer because we just do not connect with them. We do not sympathize, or I don't know what you would say. We just don't connect with them at all, and that hurts the movie.
The guy from Sons of Anarchy and this new
Charlie
Hunnam have to learn to work together and bond. And what are the chances that they may fall in love during the process?
Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah.
Idris Elba, great, powerful.
Yeah, it's always
British,
you never go wrong with having Idris Elba in your movie.
The second he wipes a handkerchief to his face and we see a drop of blood coming out of his nose, my mind jumped right ahead to, at some point he's going to need to pilot one of these rigs so he can sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
The second I saw that trickle of blood from the movie, I knew where his character arc was going. And that is repeated throughout the movie. You wanted to talk about the scientists in it. a lot of people are rubbed the wrong way with how dorky and kind of stupid, in a way, the scientists are portrayed in this movie.
There's a mad scientist quality to them. But that's a sort of Del Toro, I wouldn't say trademark, but it's definitely very much Del Toro.
In a way, it was one of the beats that I kind of liked in the movie. It was sort of a goofier thing that I could connect to. It was goofy in line with the goofy premise of the entire ludicrous world.
Yeah.
And again, I think that this might have been one of the problems of the movie. It's like, how seriously can we take this premise? Mm-hmm. A rift opens up in the ocean, and gargantuan monsters come out of it. Mm-hmm. And
I think the fact that there's
so many... stop them.
And I think that also the fact that there's so many of them that we never really emotionally connect with the monsters as well.
Yeah.
I mean... With Jurassic Park, I guess we had like the raptors and the T-Rex. Those are the basic main threats, so there wasn't too many. But there's so many different kaiju that when they come through, it's like, meh. And there's just the aesthetic of them that I thought was all right. The Del Toro's aesthetic can either be very hot or very cold, I'm starting to discover. And this is more in the American movies. When he's more in love with CGI, it tends to hurt him, I think. I do like the rendering of the robots here, but that's the whole Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, Japanime stuff, that it is very much apart. But those stories, from those cartoons that I've seen, the stories were never that deep and complex anyway, so maybe that hurts it as a movie.
I couldn't help but feel during the opening scroll when we were given the setup with like the history of these creatures coming out of the ocean.
And also the history of the drift I thought was also very interesting.
More interesting than the movie we watched.
Yes.
In a way, I feel like we watched Chapter 4 or like Pacific Rim 6.
Yeah.
And we maybe should have started with Pacific Rim 1. Mm-hmm. Like, what if the movie was this first creature erupting from the ocean, and the fact that it made it like, what was it, 200 miles inland before they finally dropped it with the conventional military weapons that they had on hand?
Yeah.
You know what? I want to watch that fucking movie.
Yeah.
I certainly want to watch it more than I wanted to watch this movie.
Yeah, I know, and it hurts me to say that about Del Toro.
But again, my complaints about the movie are mainly the story, the script. I think that Del Toro is doing as well as he can with the material he's given.
Yeah.
And I think he likes the material more than I do, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that like he's more in love with it than I, and that's fine. But what disturbs me is my failure to connect to a lot of the characters, especially the main ones. I don't think Charlie Hunnam's a bad actor, and that relationship between those two main characters was efficient enough, but they were pretty people who could say the lines without hitting the furniture, and I knew their trajectory, wasn't afraid for them, wasn't worried about whether or not they were going to end up together. There was something inevitable about this movie. Honestly, I think that they might have made a mistake. I think that the movie that they wanted, they were working up to Pacific Rim. Instead of just starting with Pacific Rim, they needed to tell us, I don't know, a different story about these kaiju. Get us to the ridiculous robot fighting monsters so that we believe it. Throwing us into the deep end this much, at least for me, I was kind of immediately detached from it. I felt at arm's length from the movie, and I didn't want to be. I love Guillermo del Toro, and I think that the reason I love him is that he does do these supernatural stories, but with genuine human emotional connections that make you care, so that the scares are more effective and that there's more impact to it. And I didn't feel that with Pacific Rim. So I've certainly not thrown in the towel with the man. I still love.
It's weird. I think he kind of suffers when he's making movies by committee, when he has more creative control. And I know this is true of a lot of filmmakers. I think that's when he starts to, the flaws start to show, I guess. I don't know. It's weird because I do agree that for the most part, the majority of movies he makes back in Europe are far superior than when he crosses over into America. Yeah. I can't quite explain it.
There are moments where the movie lights up for me a little bit. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Ron Perlman shows up as sort of an interesting...
Del Toro, steady.
Yeah, he's a guy who deals in kaiju guts,
and
basically.
Body parts.
Yeah, you want a kaiju eyeball, you got to talk to this
That
guy.
would be sort of neat. See, if they maybe did this as at least a mini-series, there's so many other little interesting stories that could have been told, like even that backstory and how he became... If they almost treated it like, say, a Battlestar Galactica, I think we would have had something more.
Like I said, I think we're thrown in too deep into the pool. I think we needed baby steps to get us to Pacific Rim, and then maybe I would have been more on board.
And even have, just a whole episode too, the designing of these machines. Yeah. But
there's a great scene that makes me smile where a giant robot hits a giant monster with a giant
I do
boat.
love the fact, I do love the fact that it has a line, elbow rocket now.
Yeah. But there's also a few times where the movie just steps over the line of stupid. The robot is unbelievably damaged. There's nothing left. There's one more trick that we can use. It's this amazing sword that will cut the creature in half, which maybe we should have opened with.
Yeah.
The problems in the movie are as large as the monsters and the robots in it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that there aren't people who are going to get off on watching Pacific Rim. Mm-hmm. And I'm not 100% against it.
Yeah.
I'm just
there's things to like about it, but
I want to like it more than I do. And I just hold Del Toro to a higher bar than this.
Yeah.
So I may be giving it what sounds like a D review. And when I'm honest, it's probably a C or even a C+ movie. Mm-hmm. But I expect more from Guillermo. And I hope that, he proves me right again someday. I don't know. I feel like I've been mean to Pacific Rim. Can we say some nice things about it too?
Just to recap, I like the stuff about the drift. If we would have had more of that, I think it would have been a lot more grabbing.
It's the way that you can sort of psychically connect to another person to help pilot a machine.
The little universes,
as we find out, to connect to the actual creatures.
Yeah, the little universes that are portrayed in this movie, I think, are far more interesting than the story of the robots and the dinosaurs. To me, Pacific Rim is one of those, what I would call the 13-year-old boy movie. Where at 13, Lee would have loved it.
Yeah.
But now we can see the flaws and go, it's not a good movie. Ghost Rider is sort of kind of in there, where it's so bad that the 13-year-old Lee would have been woohoo, but then the older you get, you don't want to revisit it. Because it is...
I had the thought watching it again, too, that if this was just straight anime, maybe it would make more sense.
Mm.
Maybe this did just need to be a Pixar movie for grown-ups.
Maybe. Anyways.
I don't know. I didn't like the movie as much as I wanted to, but I feel like it's almost like when I'm disappointed or let down by a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it's probably me. It's like...
Well, you know what's sort of weird? That so much has been built about this movie. I was expecting Game Changer. And so when I eventually saw it, I was like, meh.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. I think that they kind of hurts Pacific Rim in a lot of ways. I don't know.
For those of us out there who have an appetite for monster movies, this is another one.
Yeah.
But it does not distinguish itself. Not in this group of movies.
You could do that.
What was that?
Still filming?
Yeah. People are gonna want to know, how it all went down.
Okay, Drew Goddard
Yep.
is coming up in the world. He's just recently
coming up. I think he's came.
Yeah, well, he just got nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for The Martian. He's showrunner for Daredevil, which is the best Marvel series that I've come across so far. He co-wrote and directed Cabin in the Woods. And shortly before that...
His name has been on a lot of really good projects.
Yeah.
To the point where the man is consistently, at least consistently solid to really, really good.
So he comes out with this script for Cloverfield. It's produced by J.J. Abrams and directed by Matt Reeves, who's he does a remake of Let the Right One In, which was good, but just not 100% necessary.
Yeah, but his Dawn was way better than it should have been.
Yeah, but that monkey movie was very solid. You're right. It's an interesting animal, Cloverfield.
He also did The Pallbearer with Gwyneth Paltrow and David Schwimmer.
I have a vague memory that I watched that movie, but I know I watched that movie, but I have no memory of it.
The thing about Matt Reeves is that I think he's made at least very, consistently, at least decent movies to the point where I'm at least somewhat intrigued by what he does next.
No, I will check him out. But I think Drew Goddard might be the draw here, but I think Matt Reeves is going places too.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Cloverfield is the choice to go with the found footage perspective.
Yes.
And,
which has consistent plus and minuses.
And they embrace those plus and minuses, but they also completely piggyback the Blair Witch sort of...
Yeah. Style of
movie. Not just the style of the movie, but the whole promotion of the movie.
Yeah.
Before this movie came out, there was all sorts of videos you could find online about the Cloverfield incident.
I kind of actually liked how they advertised this movie. That for a while, people didn't even know what this movie was.
If anything, the Blair Witch parallels become almost insurmountable at certain times.
Yeah.
There's been other times where, even with found footage movies that I've liked, I've said, I like this movie well and good, but if you've seen Blair Witch, you've kind of seen this movie.
Yeah.
I can't exactly say that with Cloverfield. The structure of Blair Witch is represented, and the way that they promoted the Blair Witch is basically almost just ripped off.
Yeah.
But the fact that the scale is this huge is what makes it different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 3 kids lost in the woods. It's a group of survivors in the middle of New York City. Mm-hmm. And New York City is being torn apart by this gigantic thing that's shedding smaller things, which is just causing relentless chaos.
This has been about 4 or 5 years after 9/11, I guess, at this point. Or no, more close to 10, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But it comes out of nowhere. This thing just crawls out of the ocean and starts fucking up New York.
Yeah.
And we're at a birthday party or a going away party for this guy. And we're thrown into the chaos with everyone else. Mm-hmm. And while the shit's hitting the fan, he decides the thing he needs to do is to go rescue his ex-girlfriend, who is trapped in a half-demolished building. Mm-hmm. And we follow him and this group of survivors on the worst and, spoilers, last day of their lives.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so it's full of elements we've seen before, but it's told in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I admire, for the most part, a lot of the restraint.
Yeah.
Within the movie.
No, I
don't necessarily think it's a home run, but I think it's much more of a success than a failure. Mm-hmm. But I understand, like with most found footage movies, that it can be a divisive film. Mm-hmm. So I'm cheering for Cloverfield. I'm giving it a positive review, but I brought you here to get a second opinion.
Well, one thing about Cloverfield, and we have to talk about the found footage genre or subgenre, if you want to call it. The usual things that work and don't work with this particular type of film, and yes, once again, we have at least one of those annoying characters that never puts down the camera.
But we need the annoying character.
I know that seems to be a staple of this particular thing. So
I get fed up with that argument that I hear people saying, like, "Why are they filming that? Why are they filming that?" Yeah. Well, what is your argument against it? What should we be seeing? Mm-hmm. Should the camera just be at his feet? Is that what you want to watch?
Yeah, I know.
I don't understand.
You could probably explain it now, though, with just having a quick little body cam. Like, I'm sure at some point we're going to have a movie where it follows a cop through his really bad day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but it's just the stable of, once again, here's this really annoying character that we can't wait for it to, this person to meet its end in a lot of ways.
I didn't hate the character as much as you did, apparently. That guy's a stand-up comedian.
He's
coming
good.
Up in the world.
He's good.
But I think that if I was holding the camera and there was a giant monster attacking the city, I would fucking film every single second of it too. I honestly do. Be it a separating filter or what. If my life was in danger, maybe I would drop the camera and just run, and that is represented in the movie. But this is, if it was actually happening, the most fucked up and historically significant thing you're going to witness in your life. And if you're holding a camera, I think you'd film it.
I think you would put it down a lot more than you realize. But we're doing a lot of what-ifs at this point.
And again, that's just this is the constant fight that you have with the found footage movies.
What works,
either go with the movie or don't.
Yeah.
And in that way, you like the movie or don't before you've seen it. And if you already don't like the movie before you've seen it, I think the problem is maybe more yours than the movie's.
One thing that does work with the found footage is we don't get a good look at the monster, at least until, I'd say, at least the halfway point. And there's even sort of quick shots of them coming to another screen, and we see the creature on CNN News, whatnot, but yet we don't quite see the creature, and I think that works for it. Even the look of the monster is interesting, and even like the parasites that fall from the creature, that's a nice touch. The cast is divisive for me. I'll give you that. I mean, it just seems to me I accepted this sort of staple of at least one of the annoying characters that we just have to deal with this particular genre. The lead character, I agree, is a bit of a douche as well, I guess. But I mean, we have to have the love story, so that sort of works.
I mean, I got his need to sort of... obviously, he still has feelings for this woman, and the last conversation he had, she was clearly in peril. I get him making the decision. I think that I have more of an issue with the other people who just sort of pile on and say, I'll go with you for some reason. But I like that we stay with them because it seems like there was 100 different ways to tell this story. Yeah. We could have been with some general in the army. We could have been in the White Oval Office. We could have been seeing the ground zero. We could have stayed with a news team that was actually covering the disaster. Yeah. And then people would stop bitching about why are they filming because it's their fucking job, okay? Yeah. We could have done all of those things, but instead we're with these group of civilians, you know? Yeah. And they have no idea what they're up against. And things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah. And that trajectory, that escalating trajectory, I think is good. Mm-hmm.
I also like the fact, and this is just the way the story is told as well, that this is a recording that's over-recording as well. And at certain points it goes back to that flashback of the good old days of that date. I think that's a neat little ploy of that movie, and that's Drew Goddard, I think, there, along probably with Matt Reeves. That's a nice touch. I also love the Easter eggs in this movie. If you notice at the beginning when the movie starts and it's got all that different sort of fonts, that military font, and to give it that authentic feel, very quickly. It's a very quick shot. It's a blur, but you see the Dharma Initiative symbol in there.
Oh, really? I missed that.
Yeah. So once again, the whole J.J. Abrams universe is expanded, and it even makes an Alias connection because Slusho was a drink that the agents drank in Alias. So there's that too. If you want to be a complete nerd about it, which I kind of did with Cloverfield, whenever it goes back to those flashback sequences, there's a quick little blip shots of. Frames from King Kong, it came from another world. So he's obviously, and even Godzilla. So he's referencing, and King Kong's in there as well. He's referencing that yes, this is essentially a big monster movie. So I appreciate those little Easter eggs as well.
He's sort of acknowledging where he came from.
Yeah, and I like that. So there's that as well. And you know what? The creature is terrifying. Yeah. It's a very scary monster. Yeah. And we do like these people enough. They're yuppies, but we do like them enough that their terror is real. We fear them. There's also that one kill that we could probably talk about now. I don't feel so well that I have to say I didn't see coming. Right. And this is just right after the whole terrifying subway tunnel.
Yeah, there's these weird parasite creatures that sort of fall off the body of the creature. I'm not sure because we're never really told if it's offspring of the creature or parasites.
According to the one website, Goddard admitted that that's what he thought of them as parasites. Right. But I mean, you can see them as babies,
whatever they are. Yeah. In a way, we're going to talk about it when we talk about Emmerich's Godzilla. It sort of was like just they added smaller monsters just to keep the stakes pushing up. See, basically, once they're in the subway, they could have hidden there otherwise, right, and been relatively safe. They needed a reason to keep them in peril and keep the stakes high. I understand why they're there, but the death you're talking about is this one character actually very heroically saves another character from an attack, and as a result gets herself bitten. Yeah. And when they come across the military, obviously they've already seen a few of these bites and know what they do because she is immediately taken away from the group. Yeah. And we see just within seconds of her going behind a screen, she pops like a zit.
Yeah, like bravo.
Honestly, the first time I saw it, I thought that they'd shot her, but no, it was the bite. Something had happened that it killed her, but it was a very shocking scene.
Yeah. That's well done.
Yeah. The sideways building sequence too. I like this woman is pinned to the wall, and it's a big budget scene, and the fact that it's shot in the found footage style is interesting to me because with that elaborate of set, you'd want to cut to the wide shot. You'd want to cut to show off this amazing environment, but no, we are stuck to this tiny window of this one screen. So. There's a sequel actually imminent to this coming out.
10 Cloverfield Lane, actually.
So it doesn't look like it's found footage, hey?
No. In fact, it's completely different. They're calling it more like a Twilight Zone episode. And if what they're trying to do, what I think they're trying to do, it's an interesting idea where, pardon me, where each film, because they're always going to try and make it a series, will be completely different. So this next one is almost like the survival horror underneath in the basement after the nuclear fallout.
Well,
spoilers.
I certainly did like Cloverfield enough that I will check out the sequel. And
Have you seen the trailer for it?
I haven't. I'm looking forward to checking it out, and I'm glad that they decided to not stay with the found footage.
Yes, I agree.
think that's a good call. I mean, we'll talk about that sequel whenever we get around to talking about that sequel.
The shaky cam kind of hurts it for me a little bit when they go on the run. And once again, that's one of the things you have to accept about these movies.
Yeah, and I think, again, you either like found footage or you don't.
Yes.
It does. I get frustrated with it, well, the camera's shaking. Why are they always filming?
Well, that's just one of the things.
Okay, you just don't like found footage.
Yeah.
You just don't like found footage.
Yeah. It makes it authentic, but I can understand why people get nauseated by the whole, shake. But
I will say, at the risk of sounding condescending, that if you dismiss the entire found footage genre because of shaky camera or because of why are they still filming, I kind of feel sorry for you because you're missing out on some good movies.
Yes.
And this is one of them.
Yes.
Good enough?
Good enough.
Could replace us as the dominant species.
Okay, let's talk about the worst movie of this list. Movies.
Well, that was forward.
I'm sorry, but we saved the worst for last. The last time we spoke about Roland Emmerich, Karen Giese and I believe, were talking about Independence Day.
Okay.
And I gave it the low praise of being Roland Emmerich's finest hour.
Ooh. You're wasting no time.
It's interesting. This movie... It has the unpleasant distinction of managing the impossible. It made me dislike Ferris Bueller.
You know what? I was sort of thinking about this. You know what they should have done? Is they should have hired Matthew Broderick and said, okay, you're going to be Ferris Bueller, but you're Ferris Bueller like 15 years from now, maybe a little bit
fighting Godzilla. And he could turn and talk to us through the camera and make commentary about this.
I would have paid to see it. I think that's the movie they should have made. And in fact, he takes, Godzilla and says, hey, man, let's go, paint New York, right? And they, have a car, and him and Godzilla are, driving along, and even that ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
Still surfing the wave of the tremendous success of Independence Day.
At this point, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich were Hollywood golden boys.
And, they've never stopped making big blockbuster movies. They just haven't made a good one. They have not made a good one. Yeah. I think that this might be the worst.
Well, I haven't seen 2012 or 10,000 BC.
Oh, I haven't seen 10,000 BC. I couldn't say about that. But I think it's worse than 2012.
Okay. Well, I'll take your word for it.
And that's challenging. That's challenging.
Yeah, if you look at their filmography, you just don't. Yeah, because we've got what they were known for at this point: Stargate, Universal Soldiers,
yeah,
and then Independence Day. So yeah, he's one of those. I don't know.
He's a successful filmmaker, but not a very good one.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to be so brutal about this.
At this point, they were known for big budget looking movies, but made on a smaller budget.
So here we have this Godzilla property, and the marketing campaign around this movie was quite brilliant, and there were some clever trailers for it, and the anticipation for it was quite great. I remember, I believe you and I went to see it. It might have even been opening night.
I think it was.
And I didn't like it then, and it's aged terribly. I like it less now than I liked it then, and I did not like it then.
Yeah, I actually fell asleep the first time I saw this movie a little bit.
To pile on the hate and the pain towards the director, though.
Oh, okay.
I think that this movie reaches a special level of hubris that we did not see again until M. Night Shyamalan did
You know
Lady in
what?
the
I'm
Water.
glad you're talking about this because I want to pull what is called a Shakespearean aside.
Well, can I finish it? Like,
sorry.
What I'm trying to say is that, like, in Lady in the Water, not only does Shyamalan have a guy who's a critic who dies a bad death, but he casts himself as a guy who writes a work of such importance that it changes the world. It's so pretentious as to be gobsmacking.
Yes.
In this version of Godzilla, the mayor and the assistant mayor represents Ebert, Siskel and Ebert, the late lamented film critics from at the movies. Because they'd never given him a positive review. And throughout the movie, they're shown giving thumbs up and thumbs down. And it's this big blowing a raspberry. You give me bad reviews, but my movies make money. You're right that your movies make money. But they're also right that your movies are terrible. And the fact that you're making fun of these guys in the midst of your worst movie is so it just makes me want to tear a handful of hairs out of my head.
It's very lowbrow. All right, here we go. Filmmakers, future filmmakers, if you're listening to this podcast, and I'd like to at least think there's at least one or two. If you're going to make a movie, don't ever do this and write one of your characters as a film critic that's like a buffoon or an idiot or dies a horrible death, because you know what that does? It makes you look insecure and childish. You're not being clever. You're not being smart. You're not, this is, sneaky. You're just, it's a lame dick move. Embrace who you are.
If he was doing it in a way admitting this movie is stupid and ha ha ha, I might have laughed with him at least. I would have still thought it was dumb, but I could have laughed with him. But no, this was him waving a big fucking middle finger saying, fuck you guys. I'm a brilliant filmmaker, and the box office reflects that.
It's a dick move.
It's a dick move. It makes me like them less than its present.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong did it in Lady in the Water. There's been other filmmakers that have done it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's a lame dick move. And that's sort of the icing on the cake with this movie in a lot of ways.
It's funny how much we've been able to talk about Godzilla without actually talking about the movie at all.
There's a plot to this. Here's something else. I've never understood the popularity of the Godzilla movies. I mean, at the end of the day, they're really just sequences of a man in a green outfit up until probably this movie when Godzilla was rendered CGI, crushing miniature sets with cutaway shots of Japanese actors going,
I don't know. I think I get it. I mean, obviously the special effects standards were different in the 50s and 60s than they are now. And obviously they don't impress as much. I did a not very favorable review of Godzilla versus King Kong in my Versus episode, so I understand. They have a kitsch quality to them, I know. But I think I understand the appeal of Godzilla, at least on that side of the ocean, as, the classic Hollywood monsters were sort of overtaken by fears of the atomic age, and giant ants, and giant monsters, and atomic whatever, fears from outer space. And on the other side of the ocean, it was Godzilla. Nuclear disaster and devastation created this monster that crawled out of the ocean and created more devastation. Devastation created from devastation. I understand that working as a conceit. And I can't help but think that Hollywood producers on this side of the ocean, when they caught wind of Godzilla, were like slapping their foreheads saying, of course, a giant lizard. What the fuck have we been doing this whole time? So, do I get the base appeal of a giant lizard laying waste to a major city? Yeah, I think I do. And I don't think it would be necessarily as challenging, even as like a King Kong thing, to do a very basic C+ special effects spectacle. Giant lizard versus New York. But this movie thinks it's funny. This movie thinks it's like got the momentum and the sort of energy of like a Raiders of the Lost Ark or some real popcorn extravaganza that just is utterly handling the audience. And it's generally misjudging where the audience is almost every step of the way. Characters we're supposed to like, we don't. Characters we're supposed to not like, we do. The whole movie is dyslexic, and I say that as a dyslexic person, so no offense.
Yeah, and I think special mention has to go to one poor actor, and it's sort of not her fault because it is also a poorly written character, but poor Maria Patello in this movie. I'd never seen her before, and I don't think I've ever seen her ever again in anything.
It must have been exciting to think that you had a major role in this
a big budget,
blockbuster.
and wow, like it's just how the character's written, how she speaks. She doesn't really do anything to sort of forward what little story there is.
And do you think that perhaps the broken relationship between her and Matthew Broderick will be mended through this adventure?
Maybe,
Lee. Just fucking maybe.
Oh yeah, no, she's just wow, and she takes up so much screen time. That was just a poor choice.
Characters and actors I like. Hank Azaria, I like you. You're a good actor, and you have quite a bit of charisma in the movie.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the movie?
Yeah.
What is your purpose of your character? Jean Reno, I Will Always Love You from The Professional. What are you doing in this movie?
Drinking American coffee and going bleh. You know what? It was nice to see genre favorites Clyde Cousteau and George Chung and Al Long. Al Long, if you people know, was a huge Asian stuntman from the 80s. All those guys showed up in Big Trouble in Little China.
Right.
Anyways, but Al Leong was the guy who tortured Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon.
Right. He's that guy.
And everyone should get a chance to torture Mel Gibson, in my humble opinion. But hey, we'll save that for another day. So it was neat to see them at the beginning of the movie when Godzilla attacks this boat. Even the look of the film is just so very dated now. It's all very CGI'd, very, circa 90s. So the look of the film, I don't quite enjoy. Do you remember the soundtrack when this came out?
It was a big deal at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's got Puff Daddy, and I was always waiting for that trailer for the fucking monster to eat Puff Daddy, and it never came. It was just like one giant cock tease.
Well, and that's the thing we're talking about. Like, here's some people who are in the movie, and here's the soundtrack. Here are all the things they tried to make this movie sellable.
Yeah.
I don't even like the nouveau design of Godzilla.
Yeah, they changed it, and that was one of the criticisms.
There's something Muppety about his face that takes away the scare.
Yeah.
And when they go to the point of him laying all the eggs and like there being raptor Godzillas.
Yeah, let's get to that too. Do you remember? You obviously remember the advertising to that. Do you remember
Kodak.
Do you remember the first teaser for Godzilla and what it was doing?
Fishing? The guy's fishing?
No, that was more when it was closer. The first one was that sort of little slap in the face to Jurassic Park, because at this point, Jurassic Park had been out for a while, and they had that teaser where that teacher took that class to the museum, and they're talking about the T-Rex and how powerful and dangerous it is, and obviously it's sort of referencing, and all of a sudden you hear that familiar boom, and Godzilla's foot comes crashing in and crushing the skeleton.
Again, the fucking arrogance of that.
That was kind of a big fuck you to Jurassic Park, and then they made Godzilla, and it was just sort of not as good.
It's like the how to do it and how not to.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to make a movie better than Jurassic Park, and fuck Jurassic Park, no. Yeah. I like the way the Jurassic World had one of their dinosaurs eat Jaws at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And like, you saw that or you didn't.
Yeah.
But it was a wink. But it wasn't we're better than Jurassic Park, or we're better than Jaws.
Yeah.
Fuck you, man.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah, no. And then they had the audacity to steal the whole raptor thing. Let's make baby raptor Godzillas, because that's what Jurassic Park did.
And some of the shots are almost shot for shot. Like, it's embarrassing.
So, you know what? Fuck you, Roland Emmerich, is kind of what it's at.
A lot of the times, like I've said, if you go to rankandreview.ca, the mantra for the page is like, I don't want to be about hate. I don't think it's necessarily interesting to listen to people yell at a movie for 15, 20 minutes. But I cannot think of anything fucking positive to say about this movie. I don't think the special effects are that great. There's actors I like who are not good in the movie. And I think Matthew Broderick actively sucks in the movie.
I know.
He's not a bad actor, and he's an unbelievably likable presence in movies. I fucking hated him in this movie, and that's never happened with me and Matthew Broderick.
There's so many wrong choices with this movie,
and it's amazing. It's almost a study on how not to make a movie.
And if you're gonna try and insult the beard, you better bring the goods. Otherwise, you're gonna fall flat on your face. It also needs to be cut by a good 30 minutes. Like, honestly, you really don't need the Madison Square sequence. there's one or two false endings with this movie, and then because like just right when they've blown up Madison Square Gardens, even though it was pretty much destroyed to begin with, and all of a sudden Godzilla pops up again. At that point, you're like, oh, you're exhausted at that point.
It's Uwe Boll level bad.
Yeah.
And I will give more credit to Uwe Boll. You know why?
Why?
Because with this budget, he could make 20 films.
Yeah.
They'll all be shitty, but he could make 20 films for the same budget of this one disaster piece.
Yeah.
It's not so bad it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even fun as a sound-off movie.
Yeah.
It's not funny. It's not thrilling.
It's too long.
It's long.
Yeah.
I failed my own experiment about trying to find something nice to say. Movies are hard to make. Special effects movies are hard to
Yeah,
make.
Michael Lerner, so sorry, man. But like even like Harry Shearer and Kevin Dunn, I don't care. And that's sad. I mean,
it was a Godzilla movie, and chances were that it wasn't going to be amazing. But
yeah.
I'm actually shocked at just how awful it is.
Yeah.
I think that The Greatest Favorite did to the nouveau Godzilla, which I don't think is any great shakes of its own self, is that it set the bar shockingly low for Godzilla.
I agree.
I think that Godzilla versus King Kong, as kindergarten and ridiculous and dumb as it was, is twice the movie that this Godzilla is.
So tell me how you really feel, Larry.
I wish I could say, but this performance makes it worthwhile, or the special effects are worthy of attention, or, I think that the trailer for the movie with the old guy fishing is like the most complimentary thing I could say. It was an amusing trailer. Mm-hmm. It made it look like that could be a fun movie.
Yeah.
But watch the trailer. Avoid the movie at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was 6 giant creature features reviewed, about to be ranked. Mm-hmm. In this episode of Rank and Review, thank you very much for being here with me. I'm sorry if I came off as particularly grumpy today. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, I do actually like a lot of these movies quite a bit. There's something about that Godzilla movie has always stuck in my craw.
If you love them,
something
though,
just came out.
You know what? If you love them, though, then it's all right to basically skewer the bad monster movies, because you know what makes a good one. So don't apologize.
Yeah, anyway,
You're not.
I feel like I was foaming at the mouth a little bit for that last review. I just want to.
There.
I took my pills. I'm okay now.
He's okay, folks. He's fine. He went outside for a walk.
Maybe I just didn't realize how deeply traumatized I was by that movie. I swear, there's probably been at least one night a year since I saw that movie. I sit up bolt upright in bed and go, Godzilla! Oh.
But
I had this dream that I had this dream I was still watching that fucking movie.
Oh, Larry, I know you've got a punching doll of Roland Emmerich somewhere right next to your masturbatory UE ball.
I'm sorry, Roland Emmerich, that I'm so mean to you, but I really think that,
like he listens to us.
Yeah.
Anyways.
What was your least favorite of these creature features and why?
You'll be totally surprised. It's Godzilla.
So far, so good.
Godzilla's number 6. Number 5, and it hurts me to say this, it really, really does, because I love the man, but Pacific Rim is number 5 because it was hard for me to connect. I think you and I agree. And number 4, and this is where I think with my heart, and not my head, and I think this is where we'll probably differ, but at number 4, and it is a really good, it's a terrifying monster movie, which is hard to do, I have to say, and it's really well made. There are some things I don't like about it, but at number 4 is Cloverfield, and I'm admitting it's a very good movie. There's just some things that I have a problem with, which makes number 3. I know it's not a good movie. I'll even concede that Cloverfield is probably a better made movie, but I love it so, and I don't want to be ashamed for admitting it, but I love me some Ring of Fire. Even the designs of the dragon is sort of awe-inspiring. It's such a good movie. I agree that whether you like it or hate it will be your acceptance of Matthew McConaughey. And I understand that, folks. I get it.
Yeah.
But that movie makes me smile from no end. And I do love me some Ring of Fire. Which brings me to number 2. I know it's a shock, and it's really hard at some point. I even had it at number 1 at one point, but then I went, no, is King Kong. And I do say, do watch the extended version. You're going to be sitting down for a while. It's also not perfect, but it's made by a master craftsman in Peter Jackson, who I think we can both agree is superior. And last but not least, was there any doubt? It's just stupid that we, even when you proposed this idea, I thought, well, I know what number 1 is already. If you're going to be reviewing The Beard, it's pretty much guaranteed it's either going to be 1 or 2. But, ladies and gentlemen, at number 1, I have Jurassic Park. It is one of the greatest monster movies of all time. It's awesome to see it again. I've seen it many, many times.
It has appalling rewatchability.
It does.
It really does.
It does. So
that's a really good list, dude. And we are so fucking close that my heart breaks.
I knew it.
But I told you, even before we recorded, I thought, I just looked at you and said, we agree on number 6 and number 1.
Right.
We just do. And the middle, I'm less passionate about. But
okay.
I'm afraid I haven't cheated for anyone yet. So.
Okay.
In 6th position, Godzilla, because fuck that movie.
Yep.
I think I had already said a mouthful about it, so I'll stop there. Yeah. I agree with you. In 5th place is Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And I say that with absolutely no joy.
Yeah.
I think that it might be, just not for me. I think there are other people who will like Pacific Rim a lot more than I did. Yeah. But I hold Guillermo to a high measure.
I know, I agree.
And I don't think he met it there.
I agree.
So it's certainly not the catastrophe that Godzilla is.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So here's where we disagree.
I know, and this is where I agree. I thought with my heart and not my head.
In 4th position, I'm putting Reign of Fire. And here's the thing. I like the movie.
Yeah.
But I couldn't honestly say that it's a good movie.
And I agree with you.
I like it. It's not good. It's a risky recommendation.
I know. It's not for everyone.
It's so fucking bizarre. It demands to be watched.
I know.
And if you haven't seen it, this is me, your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, say, give a pass on Reign of Fire. If anything, you will walk away saying, it ain't boring, and I certainly haven't seen anything like it.
I know.
But I can't honestly say that it's a better movie than Cloverfield.
I know. And I agree with you in a lot of ways. So, like I said, I thought with my heart and not my head.
I am obviously less bothered with the forced perspective. I don't mind the found footage genre. And because there are a lot of bad ones, I welcome the good ones when they come. And I count Cloverfield as one of them.
I know.
As an experiential adventure and being on the ground floor of what it would be like to be in an amazingly scary crisis, I think it captures that sort of feeling of chaos and what the fuck very well. And it follows the template that was well established by Blair Witch. But it ups the scale to enough of a degree to sort of distinguish itself. So, thumbs up on Cloverfield.
Yeah, and like I said, I really like Cloverfield. I understand why it's there.
Yeah, and obviously number 2, I go with King Kong.
Yeah.
I have a great affection for the movie. I mean, I think the original will always be the original. It will always be the masterpiece classic, but this is certainly the best version of King Kong since then, and I think it would be a tough one to top. And if someone, 30, 40 years from now decides they want to make an even bigger, larger, badder King Kong, I don't know if I could handle it. So, is it perfect? No, it does have some problems. But as a work of sheer spectacle and entertainment filmmaking that keeps me eating my popcorn and keeps me watching people being eaten by dinosaurs, I love me some King Kong. And in this case, more is more.
Yep.
But Jurassic Park is this was the list with Jurassic Park and 5 other movies. And as far as, are we going to be real about talking which is the best giant monster movie?
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people will get all sort of hung up at, well, a lot of the villains are actually the Velociraptors, and the Velociraptors were about the same size as us, but fuck you.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is an amazing movie. It's about dinosaurs eating people, and I honestly think that unless the weight of the world has so obliterated your spirit that you have not even a single thread or shred of wonder left in your system, Jurassic Park is going to entertain you. And if it doesn't, I weep for you. I really think that's unfortunate.
I think, looking at our list, like we're pretty close, and I understand why you put Cloverfield above Rain and Fire.
One of these days you're going to go 6%.
I know, but
it kills me. It's so
and
close.
Screw you, Karen, that you're now 2-0. I have to work even harder now. But I guess I embraced the lunacy of Rain of Fire. I know I saw the flaws are evident, and I guess I embraced the suck in that regard. But I get why Cloverfield is the better made movie. I think that the deciding factor for me was that there was some turn-offs with, the character beats, I guess, in Cloverfield, and how they were portrayed. Plus the shaky cam sometimes got to me a little bit. It's still sort of ingenious in how it's presented. I do like it that way.
There's a percentage of what the fuck to the Rain of Fire. Like, it's just weird that it exists. And kind of awesome that it exists,
I
but
know.
It's weird.
Yeah.
And again, I can call it entertaining, but I can't quite tip over to calling it good.
And once again, I agree with you. So, and I even thought about switching it at one point, because I kind of knew that you were going to have Cloverfield above it. But I had to think with my heart. I'm ashamed I thought with my heart. I even said that. I'm thinking with my heart and not my head when I rank this. But yeah, I don't know. I will say this. I have seen Reign of Fire many more times than I've seen Cloverfield. Yeah. So, and there's something to that.
Well, it is a movie that, I would enjoy showing to someone. Like, if they hadn't heard of it or they didn't know it exists, you've never heard of Reign of Fire? Come here, I'm going to show you.
You have to know your friend, though. I would pay money to see Karen Giese down and show this to her and see your face.
It's certainly not a movie that everyone needs to see, but people who are fan of monster movies and genre cinema, it's worth a peek. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I could, and I also think this Drew Goddard guy, he's got shit figured out.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Cloverfield may not be his high watermark. I still think that screenplay for Cabin in the Woods, just generally Cabin in the Woods, is just awesome.
I always kind of wondered what a Sinister Six film was going to be like, because he stepped away from Daredevil to work on a Spider-Man movie that never got made. He was set to direct it. Excuse me.
Well, I think he's landed on his feet with this whole Martian thing.
Yeah. He did all right.
Yeah.
But, anyways, good on you, Drew Goddard. But, I don't. What else can you say, man?
I can say that I do enjoy giant monster movies, and I can say thank you for doing the podcast on giant monster movies.
Thank you for having me.
There are more giant monster movies to come in the future, and I'm looking forward to the Cloverfield sequel. I'm looking forward to more Jurassic Park movies.
Yep. They'll revisit Godzilla.
It's funny how seriously I seem to take these movies. I had a chip on my shoulder this episode, but again, it's because I love them.
You are feisty, Larry.
I get that they're silly movies, but I genuinely love them, and when they're done well, they can be so good. And because I love them when they're done well, I get frustrated when they're half-assed. So I would like to be proven wrong about Roland Emmerich. If Roland Emmerich if this sequel to Independence Day turned out to be awesome, I would be genuinely thrilled. Because honestly, as far as I'm concerned, he is
You're really, really smacking around Roland.
He's symbolic of everything that's wrong to Hollywood, as far as I'm concerned. He has not made an okay movie, really. I guess, Independence Day is okay.
It's fine for what it is, but it's got its creaks and moans.
But his movies are $100-200 million movies, and he keeps on getting to make another one, no matter how shitty the one is. I think maybe it's just that everybody's all over Michael Bay, and I'm like, relax your hate on Michael Bay, save some for Roland Emmerich.
Okay.
And that's Jerry Springer's final thought.
I'm so proud of you.
Stop
And that brings this episode to a close. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, you can contact Rank and Review at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and do spread the word on the show.